Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you. It is the 20th of March, 2025. And I was just reading something that really sobered me up. And I really want to share it with you. Not all of it, but enough of it, because it is, I think, something to be taken to heart. When I couldn't sleep last night, I was thinking of if I were to go to a protest and if I were to make a sign, what would my sign say? I'm not good at these kinds of things. I would never be a good headline writer, sort of getting things down into a word or two. And what? Am I on mute? No. I'm okay, right? Yeah. And what I thought was, finally, my protest sign would just say, "Stop it. Stop it." And then I fantasized about a reporter coming up to me and saying, "What does that have? Stop what?" And oh my God, I mean, just everything that came pouring out. And I want them to stop. And the other thing I thought of is if I were to put on a sign to hold in a protest was, because it's just this plea. I want the old America back. The old one. The one I knew. The one I often was critical of. But the one that moved forward. Haltingly often. But still moved forward. Anyway, here's what I was reading. And I think it bears listening to. It's by Andrew Egger. And he talks about the fact that there is a poem by Philip Larkin called Homage to Government. And he just takes one line out of it for us to think about. And that line is, "Our children will not know it's a different country." Let that sink in. Our children will not know it's a different country. And then he goes on. The damage being done today, the scope of the global cruelty and tragedy is hard to take in. It is the sort of stain that should be remembered. Will it be? For decades, this country gave aid to Africa, HIV prevention and treatment, vaccines, clean water, food. It's been a lifeline for millions of people. And now, bang, it has simply vanished. And experts estimate that if Trump stays the course, millions may die within a year. There will be some news cycles, some indignant punditry, probably some harrowing Pulitzer-grade photojournalism of dying children, and then a slow return to the new normal. The victims' surviving families will remember them. But will we? Will our children? Something I mentioned yesterday that I found so appalling. For 2 years, the United States has spent millions tracking one of Russia's vilest war crimes, the abduction of as many as 35,000 Ukrainian children into Russia for forced adoption. A group funded by the State Department had assembled a trove of evidence on these children, crucial information for any future attempt to reunite them with their families. But Donald Trump and Marco Rubio's State Department has destroyed the contract, and no one can find the data. It's missing, perhaps destroyed. How many children's best chance of ever seeing their families again were destroyed? And Egger says this, and here's what we do have to remember. We humans are master rationalizers. We adopt the new normal faster than we realize. Donald Trump is back in the White House because of a wave of forgetting about his first term. His love affair with dictators, his mismanagement of COVID, his attempt to steal the 2020 election, all got washed away in the minds of many voters because they were overshadowed in the moment by irritations of the moment. The price of groceries, the price of rent. And he prevailed, Trump, in no small part, thanks to shocking strength with young voters who had no memory of a time before Trump dragged our politics down to his own base. I mean, not his base, his own base, an adjective, amoral, post-truth level. So Trump and his allies know that as they work to build a future that is smaller and crueler and more paranoid, more violent, that human nature is on their side. We rationalize the current. We block out the past and imagine it as something brighter than it was. Getting out of all of this starts with remembering. Remembering that it was good to be a country that cared about babies born with HIV in Africa. That it was good to be a country that was willing to save their lives for pennies a day. It was good to be a country that worked tirelessly to bring those kidnapped Ukrainian children home to their families. And that is why that poetic line is so eviscerating. Our children will not know it's a different country. Yeah. And speaking of that, I did read a really interesting piece. I think it was in the Washington Post about these younger voters that have gone to Trump. You know, young voters were always taken as a given that they would go to the Democrats. But increasingly, these young voters are going to Trump. They did. Now, this is Gen Z. I hate all these. I so hate this, categorization of huge groups of people. I always have. You know, that people born between this year and that year have, are like, fill in the blanks. I mean, what bullshit. Yes, you can say that we are all products of the time in which we grew up and formed opinions and but my god, that just full scale erasure of individuals into this massive group, as if I'm an old baby boomer, one of the oldest baby boomers, and and when I hear of what baby boomers are, I think, well, it's not me. It's like astrology. It's like everybody born in a certain time has these certain characteristics. I'm sorry, guys, bullshit. Okay, but this is something we do. We categorize. So this young Gen Z woman who wrote this is telling us something that I guess I hadn't realized. And I appreciate her for telling me. And it is that Gen Z, and that's, I don't know, what is that, the age? That's like 30, or like 30 to something and on down. I'm not sure. Her name, by the way, is Rachel Jan Faza. And in fact, she became a journalist who covers youth culture. And she is one of the older of the Gen Z. And what she realized is that Gen Z, these younger people, are quite, if you want to start the categorization stuff, are really easily divisible into two distinct generations. They're not the same. They did not grow up in the same reality. And that the younger of Gen Z are the ones who literally don't remember a different America. And they have become much more conservative. And it's ridiculous to say conservative because that's not what Trump is. They have come of age roiling in the environment, the brutal environment that he creates. And she points out that this is the generation that the pandemic really got. I know it killed more old people, but it killed the childhood, the adolescence of a lot of these younger people. It harmed it, damaged them. At that time in our lives, that adolescent period when we're, trying so hard to get a grip to figure out who we are, what we're here for, what's our play, they did not have the ability to have, in any respects, a normal adolescence or childhood. Now, this young woman says COVID upended all of our lives and altered the course of history, and it definitely bifurcated this young generation, the youngest voters. On one side, there are those, she says, like me, who graduated from high school and were already beginning our adulthood before COVID. On the other side, there are our younger brothers and sisters whose formative years were defined by the COVID lockdown, virtual learning, isolation. So she's calling the older cohort Gen Z 1.0 and the younger, the more damaged Gen Z 2.0. And then she says this, which is so true. And these small age differences within what is a 15-year span of Gen Z have been further exacerbated by the rapid pace of technology. The rise of algorithmic platforms like TikTok, and then the invention of Chat GPT AI. So she says you got to understand that politically, these groups are in different places. Both move to their right, all of Gen Z move to the right in their voting behavior, while still, on the whole, narrowly supporting the Democrats. But it still was a dramatic shift after 2 decades of young voters favoring Democrats by blowout margins. But she said if you look closer, though, there are social, cultural, and ideological differences between these 2 groups of Gen Z, the older ones and the younger ones, and it goes well beyond voting. Think of these younger ones, the ones that are not like the usual American young people of their age. And they're not. They grew up, she says, in turmoil, in a world where everything seemed broken. K through 12 education, social interactions, the economy, traditional institutions. They felt the emotional toll as government mismanagement kept them in lockdown and away from their friends. They missed all the milestones that kids live for: prom, big football games, graduation. They were confined. They were under house arrest. They were confined to their homes when they should have been having a normal childhood. They didn't have outlets to flirt or spaces to cultivate as their own with their peers. authority seemed arbitrary, even incompetent, as clearly the adults were fumbling around, unsure what to do. Stop and remember COVID. And these younger kids, too, grew up with their under what she says and they feel like walking, and it's what I've often said of it. They ended up in an environment which was like a walking on eggshells culture, which was shaped by the activism of their older siblings, Gen Z 1.0. Those are the ones who went off the rails with the crapola. So that I always felt, too, who didn't, that I was afraid to speak for fear of using the wrong word. And man, the blowback from that has been huge. And the younger Gen Z sees that kind of crap and associates it with progressivism. Their lockdown childhoods and adolescence, they see that as progressivism. And then she points out the technology. And all of this difference in experience was turbocharged by the differences in these two Gen Z's relationship to social media. It's hard to realize how the quick pace of change in social media creates different environments and realities within a span of years. So while Gen Z 1 and 2 spend a whole lot of time looking at their phones, the younger ones cannot conceive of a time when they didn't have a smartphone, when they didn't always look to social media. 9% of young adults said they got their news from TikTok in 2020, okay? 5 years ago. 9%. 4 years later, that was 40%. And it's even more so now. TikTok. So TikTok took off at the height of the pandemic. It was the lifeline for all these kids under house arrest, when there was nothing to do but doom scroll through the crisis. And so what began as a platform for silly dancing videos and trends and stuff also started delivering to these kids political news. And it's there on TikTok and some of the other platforms, YouTube as well, where many of these right-wing so-called whatever, I don't know, creators they're called, influencers, began putting out the content that these younger Americans grew up on. And the algorithm that also had everything to do with what they would see further splintered the generation. Rage was always something that went viral. The social media ecosystem, which has, she says, inevitably shaped this generation's worldview, paints most divisive issues as black and white, with little room for nuance or openness to constructive criticism. That damages, that has damaged thousands of young people. I just think, okay, I mean, there's a lot more, obviously, but I just find that really thought provoking and something I had not considered. But any of us who are parents can certainly remember, or any of us, all of us who were young preteens and adolescents and young adults ourselves, try to conceive of the world our young people grew up in, what they didn't have, and then what they did have. God, I don't know. Something else that a friend sent me that I want you to try to find yourself. It's in the Guardian and worth reading. It's long, so I haven't had the opportunity to finish it myself. But it is an article about the Canadian woman who got detained. I hadn't even heard of this thing. Who got detained by ICE, and ended up in prison for 2 weeks. And she has written her account of what happened, and it is chilling. Chilling. And again, it puts me back to my sign. I want my old America back. Stop it! She talks about the other women that were, I mean, she meant her cellmates and the conditions they were kept under. Good God in heaven. Freezing cells with just those, like aluminum foil blanket. And a lot of the people that get stuck are people that maybe her thing is mind blowing what happened to her. She'd done nothing. And she hears this stories of the other women who are imprisoned with her. She said, I met a woman who'd been on a road trip with her husband. They had 10-year work visas. And then while driving near the San Diego border, they mistakenly got into a lane that was heading to Mexico. They stopped and told the agent, we don't have our passports. We weren't intending to go out of the country. Can you tell us how we get out of this lane? And instead, they were both arrested. I met a family of 3, she said, who'd been living in the US for 11 years with work authorizations. They paid taxes, were waiting for their green cards. Every year, the mother had to undergo a background check. But this time, she was told, bring her whole family for the check. And when they arrived, they were all taken into custody, told their status would now be processed from within the detention center, and they don't know what they did or how they can get out. No one would tell her anything. She says this: I was taken to a nurse's office for a medical check. She asked what had happened to me. She'd never seen a Canadian there before. When I told her my story, she grabbed my hand and said, "Do you believe in God?" I told her, "Yes, now more than anything." And then the nurse tells her, "I believe God brought you here for a reason. I know it feels like your life is in a million pieces, but you will be okay. Through this, I think you are going to find a way to help others." She asked if she could pray for me. I held her hands and wept. I felt like I'd been sent an angel. I was then placed in a real jail unit, 2 levels of cells, just like in the movies. I was put in a tiny cell alone, but I finally was given a real blanket. It is the most beyond belief story of what we are doing to people. And she, because she's a blonde, white Canadian, her horror story, and she points out, bears no resemblance whatsoever to the horrors that these other people were going through. One woman had a 10-year visa. When it expired, she moved back to her country, Venezuela. Later, she returned for a vacation and entered the US without issue. But when she took a domestic flight from Miami to LA, she was picked up by ICE and detained. She couldn't be deported because Venezuela wasn't accepting any deportees, so she was stuck in an American jail. How many of these stories? I want my old country back. But this is the America our children, young children today, will think of as America. They will not know. Yeah, here's an America. Here's let me uh let me find this thing. It's just, guys, this is an America. Our young people will know an America where this happened in Idaho to a elementary school teacher. Perhaps you've heard of it. She had a banner up in her classroom that says, "Everyone is welcome here." She was told to take it down. I want my old America back. And then, as I mentioned yesterday, we now know that some of these murderous, awful terrorists that we sent off to El Salvador don't even have, they have no criminal record. People got swept up. Some might be bad guys, and some might be total innocents. And then you see how this crowd, the Trump crowd, reacts to that reality. I give you a quote from Steve Bannon. Hey, maybe some people got caught up in it. Who knows? I think they got everybody who was a bad guy, but guess what? If there's some innocent gardeners in there, the racism is mind blowing. If there's some innocent gardeners in there, hey, tough break. That's where we stand. Well, that's not the way the America I remember stands. We were a nation of laws and due process for the least of us. We were not a dictatorship. The Constitution starts with we the people. We are. Doesn't say the king, the president. This administration is lawless, rogue, and has got to be resisted at every possible point. Their incompetence, along with their cruelty, is just mind blowing. You've seen with this mass, I'm sorry, I can't help it. The surgeon said this will last 3 to 6 months. Okay, so yeah, the Kennedy papers. Jesus H. As with everything this crowd does, they do it badly, incompetently. And so it turns out that they released in those papers the Social Security numbers of hundreds of Americans. Anyone who served on the Senate Select Committee on Assassinations, of the House Select Committee, and a lot of those people were young lawyers then. And they're old lawyers now. But all of their identities now, what do you do if anybody and everybody can? It's all there in the papers, all of their Social Security information. And that's what this incompetent White House has put out. It's unknown if they've also managed to put out incredibly top secret information that would still be of value to our enemies. One of the young lawyers, who's now an old lawyer, whose stuff was put out there, is mad as hell. And being a lawyer, he wants to sue. Good luck with that. And to make it even richer, his name is Joseph DeGeneva. And if that rings a bell, it is because he was the attorney for the Trump campaign. And he is now enraged. Well, tough, as Steve Bannon would say. Tough. Them's the breaks. Texas. There's a Trump state. Texas. Women are dying in Texas because of Republican priorities. As you may remember, the Texas legislature passed a bill called the, I think, Fetal Heartbeat Act or something of that nature, with, incredibly vague language that said that if a heartbeat was detectable, that any doctor performing an emergency abortion on a woman to save her life, well, she couldn't do it. I mean, the doctor couldn't do it if a fetal heartbeat. The bill said that any doctor had to provide the best opportunity for the unborn child to survive. So the unborn child's life trumps the living, breathing woman's life. And the penalties for anybody, a doctor who acted thinking more of perhaps the woman and in the moment, could face up to 20 years in prison, according to the Texas law. And with that hanging over doctors' heads, they weren't thinking of the woman first. They were thinking of themselves. And women have died. Now, lest you think I'm saying women have died, and it ain't true, I'm just trying to score points, for our side. Wrong. Enough women have died that this week a Republican legislator put forth a new bill. Now, this guy fully supported the old one, but he has seen that the old bill killed women. So this anti-abortion representative, state representative, actually put a new bill in the hopper. And while believe me, it's not, what it does is acknowledge the harm. And so this new bill says that doctors are allowed to provide emergency abortion if the woman has a physical condition from her pregnancy that puts her at risk of death or poses a serious risk of substantial impairment of a major bodily function unless the abortion is performed. This is an anti-abortion guy, and this is expected to pass because the Republicans know that that bill that they put through after Roe v. Wade was, they know that women have died as a result. When you wait for a fetal heart to stop in a woman who is miscarrying, why would she be in the ER anyway? Right? When you do not move until the fetus's heart stops, the woman can often develop sepsis. This is how these women have died. This is when your body just goes berserk. It causes kidney failure, brain damage, and death. This Republican rep who's put the clarifying bill in said, "This is the most important legislation of my 24-year career. Too many women have suffered," he said. Too many have died, he said. If one has died, it's too many, but more have. I have friends whose wives can no longer conceive because of the problems they went through with their first pregnancy and the delay that doctors face in addressing their problems. So here we have a rare Republican admitting that they killed women with their brilliance, their cruelty, their patriarchy. Oh, I don't know if you saw this. This is actually sort of old news, but I'm bringing it up. Uh, the Supreme Court, man, they're going to be busy. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a First Amendment case. Dear God. And it is filed by someone who does conversion therapy in Colorado. That's somebody who prays the gay away, essentially, therapeutically. Conversion therapy has been declared illegal in a whole bunch of states and municipalities. I know Pittsburgh has. Medical groups always support it. They say conversion therapy is bullshit. And now you have one of these people who has said that the Colorado law, which bans what they do, violates her rights to free speech and the free exercise of her religion, which says that being gay is, I guess, an adulteration, an abomination, something horrible, and it had to be altered. So, you tell me how that's going to come down. I don't know. I don't think we can rely on Amy Coney Barrett on that one. I don't think so. And then there's this thing, speaking of Amy Coney. Geez, this is unbelievable. So you got Trump and his mag rats talking about this judge, this poor judge, and they're talking about him as if he's well, Trump called him a radical left lunatic, a troublemaker, an agitator. This is Judge Boasberg, the one who told him to turn the planes around. Well, right-wing social media has gone farther. They've said that he's a terrorist lover, that he should be jailed. The brilliant Laura Loomer has somehow turned her sights on his daughter and has said his family is a national security threat, which, of course, as soon as this stuff happens, these families end up targeted. I did not know this, but Amy Coney Barrett, I'll get her name at some point, Amy Coney Barrett, because she was perceived to have voted against Trump, along with John Roberts recently, has, of course, gotten nothing but the condemnation and murderous rage of the Trumpians. What has that meant? Well, you can believe you know what it means. She will not talk about it. Efforts by reporters to ask her the impact that she has suffered as a result of her judicial determination. But I'll tell you, her sister in South Carolina has had pipe bomb threats, police dispatched to her home on more than one occasion. Barrett's parents have also had threats at their homes. Another of her sisters as well. Barrett will not confirm that she herself has been threatened, but you can bet if they're going after her parents and her sisters that, of course, she is. Of course, Roberts is. Of course, they all are. One of the things apparently they're doing, and this has to do with their, they like to scare people, they like to intimidate people. Now, one of the things they're doing to judges all over the country is they send pizzas to their homes. A doorbell rings and here's your pizza. I didn't order a pizza. Yeah, you did. Now that seems like a prank, right? No, that's not a prank. That is an attempt to intimidate. It is saying to the judge, and this has happened to so many of them, we know where you live. These threats are mounting. I don't. It's why I'm sure Roberts came out the other day and in his incredibly mealy-mouthed way tried to tell Trump to shut up. You see how much good that did. So just understand that these people are, we are, guys, we're in a full-blown, we're watching. This makes January 6th look like a tea party. We are looking at an ongoing coup d'etat right now. We are looking at a totally lawless administration. And when it becomes clear that this administration will not abide by the law, I mean, it already has, but when finally you get maybe even the Supreme Court saying, you can't do that. And they say, yeah, what you gonna do about it? Then our democracy is gone. Simple as that. Then our democracy is gone. A few little, I see my time is running out here. I want to get to, Allison writes, listening to NPR, scholar of the Constitution was answering questions about Trump trying to impeach the federal judge. And when this scholar was asked what would happen if Trump ignored the judge and just did what he wanted, the gentleman said, well, we'd have a constitutional crisis. And then when he was asked, well, yeah, then what do we do? He replied, I don't know. Also on NPR, she said they were talking to Trump supporters. And when asked why they were still supporting Trump, they said they're not worried about losing democracy. They didn't care. They were saying things like, democracy is not as great as what people think, and so on. I heard both of these on NPR while driving. I did hear enough to send a chill up my spine and make me believe that we are at the beginning of the end if something is not done soon. I agree. I agree. And then there's this. Barbara sent me this a few days ago, in case you hadn't seen it. A Republican state lawmaker in Minnesota who recently introduced a bill to create a mental illness category for liberals who had Trump derangement syndrome. I kid you not. This Republican lawmaker in Minnesota was arrested and booked on Tuesday. Police say he was talking to a 17-year-old girl on the internet and was attempting to meet her for sex. And yeah, so he's been arrested. He's, of course, married with 4 children of his own and now facing felony charges for soliciting a minor for prostitution. Yeah. The reality is that he has been he is under pressure now to resign. Yeah. A few other little, just picking up the pieces here. A French, speaking of ICE protecting us from these scary people coming into the country, Le Monde, the French newspaper, is reporting that a French scientist who was flying into the U.S., going to Houston to attend a scientific conference, was denied entry after they searched his phone and found messages critical of Trump's science cuts. And he was told that his hatred, obvious hatred of Trump, could be qualified as terrorism. His computer was confiscated, and I believe he's back in France. He's lucky he wasn't put into custody. So there's your America now, guys. And again, ain't business as usual. Don't think it is for a moment. And you can be afraid, fine, but not too afraid to act in ways that you never have. Push yourselves. I'm not kidding. All of us. And as if things weren't bad enough, I read right before the show, the Minnesota Vikings have said, nah, we don't want Aaron Rodgers. So, guys, that means there's just 2 teams who have not said that. The New York Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And as a Green Bay native, I just want to go on the record as saying, please, please Do not bring that son of a bitch chaos agent here. We don't want him. And on top of that, he's over the hill. If you wanted him, it would have made sense 5 years ago, but it don't make no sense now. All right, you guys, that's it for me. God bless us. Really.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.